Hello, and welcome to another episode of Video Store Rejects. This is a podcast where we discuss directors' filmographies, one film at a time, and our favorite film franchises. I'm your host, Cody House, and with me is my co host, our social media content editor, Chris Jacobs,
How's it going, everybody in Reject Land?
and our research and fact checker extraordinaire, Lindsay Jacobs.
Hello.
And today we have a very special guest who graciously came in at the last minute because I've had two guests cancel for this show. And that's Robbie Fleming, YouTuber, film reviewer extraordinaire himself.
Hello, everyone. Here from the UK as well.
Thank you, Robbie. We are discussing the fantastical world of Guillermo Del Torro and the whimsical world of Moonrise Kingdom. Robbie is going to be a guest on two of those installments. He's going to be with us on Moonrise Kingdom and The Shape of Water, but he had volunteered to be on this show when our first guest canceled, and I was like, I appreciate it. I'm trying to get different guests. I found a different guest, and at the last minute, they had an emergency that came up, said they couldn't do it. And I was like, we really got to record this Hellboy episode because we've got all these other episodes already scheduled. And I didn't want to do a show on Halloween weekend. So, Robbie, thank you for coming in and saying, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow, the next day.
Thank you, Cody, for having me on. Hellboy was the first Del Toro film I watched. It was my introduction to him. So I'm happy to come on and talk about this movie.
Great. Now, it wasn't the film you picked initially, but are you a fan of Del Toro, and do you love this movie as well, or do you just more like this movie?
This is probably in my top 3 Del Toro.
Oh, interesting. So here's a question I didn't know we were going to get into so early. Do you prefer this one over the sequel?
After rewatching both of them recently, I actually prefer the sequel.
Okay. I prefer the sequel as well, and it's kind of a shame our editor, Jim Herron's not here, because when we were getting our guests for Hellboy 2, and they talked about how much they loved that and thought it was superior to the original, Jim chimed in that he actually prefers this one. And I have a theory of why people might prefer one or the other. I think if you want something that's a little more faithful to the comic book and closer to Mingola'swork work, this is probably the film for you. Mm-hmm. But if you appreciate Del Toro having more creative control and creative freedom and being more of a Del Toro film, you probably like the second one more. And
the first one set the tone. Like, it just gave you just enough of a taste.
I agree with Chris, but I'm remembering a conversation me and you had, Cody, about creative vision in movies, and I kind of agree where you're coming from with Hellboy 2 being better because of the creative differences.
Yeah, well, with the second one, it seemed like he was like, okay, well, you want more of the world, the underworld of Hellboy. Yes. And more of the lore and the monsters and the fairies and stuff. I'm going to give it to you. So it was like, okay, the second one was an explosion of just Del Toro and Mignola's vision and just that style.
Definitely.
I kind of compare it to Tim Burton's Batman movies, though that might be a little different. But I think that, in 1989, they kind of had to introduce Batman to the world, which is weird because you think everybody knows who Batman is. But in that time period, a lot of people who weren't comic book fans, their version of Batman or what they thought Batman was Adam West. So they kind of had to, no, that's not who Batman is. This is who Batman is. But he was kind of held under restraints because he was a young director. It was a big studio gamble. A Batman movie wasn't a guaranteed box office success. But then he is given complete creative freedom on the sequel, but kind of strays from the comic book lore I don't think Hellboy 2 strays as far as Batman Returns does, but that's how I kind of compare it to.
I see where you're coming from, Cody. I see where you're coming from.
That's a good comparison. I like that. Like I mean, it did feel like in the second in Batman Returns, you got more of the surround. You got more Gotham. You got more characters. You got more villains. So I mean, that's a good comparison, Cody. I can see it that way.
Yeah, and if you want to hear me talk more about why Batman Returns rules, you can listen to the Pons Press where we ranked all the Batman movies, and I put Batman Returns in my top 3 Batman movies. I know that's crazy, but I did it.
No, that Batman Returns is excellent, and as much as I love, Batman '89, because it did set the tone for me. It was my Batman. Batman Returns is just such a magnificent film. I mean, it's great. And I love my favorite villain, as much as Michelle Pfeiffer was great as Catwoman, Danny DeVito's Penguin is still just a horrifying villain to me, like today.
He's fantastic as a Penguin.
Yeah.
But enough sidetracking on Batman and back to Hellboy. Robbie.
Batman.
Robbie, you talked about this was your first Del Toro. So did you learn his name like when you watched this and you're like, oh, I got to see what other movies this guy's done?
No, I learned about him after I watched this film when Pan's Labyrinth was first advertised, and I was like, is that the bloke who directed Hellboy? Yeah, obviously I was quite young. I wasn't obviously as into like knowing who directors are like I am now.
Of course.
Yeah, it was definitely a different tone, like a different. I remember feeling the same way. I knew who he was because of the hype around Hellboy. Like he kind of blew up.
I mean, I'm going to be honest. I wasn't really a fan till I first watched The Shape of Water, but now I've rewatched the majority of these films. I've kind of loved them a bit more because of his artistic vision, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, it's definitely unique. I can't wait to get into Shape of Water because it'll be our first time through. I think we started it, and then for some reason, like 5 minutes in, we had to stop it because we have 3 children, and we never picked it back up. But I'm interested to see it because, again, Shape of Water to me is almost like an Abe Sapien story. Like
it is. It is. Like, I think it's his granddad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
and it's Doug Jones, and it's a love story as well that he kind of plays with in Hellboy 2.
Yeah. Yeah. Although he's not my favorite in Hellboy out the cast, so I want to get into that in a bit.
Well, is he not your favorite because we don't get to hear Doug Jones because the studio demanded, and that's another reason why I compared it to the Batmans, because there's a lot of studio interference in this film, and we get David Hyde Pierce as the voice.
Just like the Suicide Squad as well. We had to get a real proper artistic director to step in to make a good movie.
Well, and that probably ties into why a lot of people like the second one again, because there was so much restraint by the studio. Sorry, we have a bee or something. By the studio that he couldn't really, I guess, let loose with probably what he wanted. Maybe that's why it's a little more restrained, because when you look at it, it is a restrained movie. Like he could have done so much more with it. It's great the way it is.
Yeah, that's why I prefer him when he does more artistic films like Pan's Labyrinth and The Shape of Water, because he's allowed to do whatever he wants in them.
Right. But yeah, I did feel like a very heavily restrained movie. Like he had to play it safe.
Well, let me take you back in time. So they were trying to develop this movie as late as the late 90s. So Del Toro's only got 2 movies under his belt. Comic book movies are starting to get successful, and by the time Hellboy comes...
Did he get the job because of Blade 2?
Absolutely. That's what greenlit it. That's what greenlit this movie, was because of Blade 2's success. And And that's kind of where his name becomes known, at least in America, Robbie, was Blade 2, because I remember reading
I can picture. That's why I think Blade 2 is the best directed out of the 3 films, because it's him.
Well, I don't want to throw shade at David Goyer or Stephen Norrington, but it's the only one.
No, David Goyer is a fantastic writer, in my opinion. I think the first Blade script is fantastic. I'm not even being sarcastic about that.
But they are not really visionary directors. I mean, Guillermo Del Toro is a craftsman above all. And
well, David Goyer is more the writer than a director. I don't know why he's directing movies to begin with. Some people can do it, some people can't, and David Goyer should just stick to his laptop in the writing room.
Everyone, I guess, has ambitions and wants to throw their hats. But I recently, there's a online critic. She's a horror fan expert, Clark Wolf. She talked about Guillermo Del Toro probably being possibly the best genre director working today.
Yes, he is.
And I'm inclined to agree with her that.
Yeah, because his movies are quite similar to Wes Anderson's. They kind of end up having their own genre.
Yeah. And you always are going to get a H.P. Lovecraft reference. And I forgot how much Cthulhu referencing was in this movie. Like, because I haven't seen this one in a while. And I was like, I totally forgot about this giant tentacle.
It's a classic, in my opinion. An absolute classic.
Yeah. But yeah, the struggle to make this movie, because comic book films were just starting to make a profit. And even though Spider-Man had come out by the time they make Hellboy, and this isn't a Marvel comic or a DC comic. I believe it's a Dark Horse comic. So
I've also just thinking about this in my head. Do you think out of the cast, do you think John Hurt was the selling point of this movie, or do you think it was Jeffrey Tambor? Because them two are quite big actors out of the cast, and I can see Ron Perlman being more of a niche actor by then. He's not a big name like he is now.
He is Professor Broom. He is, in my opinion.
I gotta go with maybe John Hurt, even though he was never a big box office name here in the States, but he was a respected and well-liked actor.
Yeah.
So I think that made some credibility.
It's more about, obviously, repetition than how much money they bring in, really. And it's about their talent. Hurt is a very talented actor.
And from what I read, Tambor was brought on last minute because the original actor they cast in that role didn't show up.
I couldn't picture anybody else to play that role apart from Jeffrey Tambor, though. That's just really weird. And I love Jeffrey Tambor.
Yeah, he's a very talented actor. I don't want to get into his problematic issues.
No, I'd rather separate the art from the artist.
Right.
But yeah, he's good here, and there's a good back and forth between him and Perlman in both films, of like him being the bureaucrat and trying to keep things under wraps and control, and Hellboy being a loose cannon.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, these are the issues they had. They didn't want it to be called Hellboy, even though that's the name of the character. They didn't want him to be in red makeup the whole time. They're like, can he only turn into Hellboy when he's angry like the Hulk?
Oh, no.
Funny. All you have to do is pick up a book and read it, or just look at stuff on the internet about it.
Funny little story, and I will not take up much time, but I worked at our local theater when this movie came out, and I remember my boss at the time, he was like, hey, we've got these 3 posters, and I need you to put them up. Or we have an assortment of posters, and they're all coming out. Just put them up around the lobby. So I put all these posters up, and I go to do something else, and he calls me out front, and he goes, hey, I want you to take a look at this. And remember where we're at. We're in the Bible Belt, right? So I'm like, yes. And he goes, now take a look. Just look at the posters and tell me if you see anything wrong. And I just sit there and I was like, nope, not really, man. Just 3 movies. And he goes, look, you cannot have Hellboy out next to Passion of the Christ. It It will not fly in little podunk religious
Grandma will have a fit.
Church grandmas will burn this place down, and you will be burned at the stake as a witch. Like, that's all there is to it. He goes, I need you to just move it to the other side of the lobby.
Keep Jesus and Hellboy. Socially distanced.
Keep them separate.
But, I knew you were going to bring up Passion of the Christ, because when this movie came out, that was like making so much money. And I didn't know this, but apparently there were a lot of theaters that pulled Hellboy from their screenings during Easter weekend.
No, we ran it straight through. I remember getting to preview it, and then like it did really well until Passion of the Christ, and then like they started shipping like no joke, like travel buses, loads full of churches into this little.
See this film in theater cinema?
I sadly did not. I rented it on DVD.
I'm glad I'm not the only one, because I rented this at our. We had a small video shop in our local town, and I rented it from there. And me and my dad watched it, and then years later, my mate gave me the DVD. So then I brought the second one.
Nice.
So,
definitely worth it.
I did get to see the second one twice in theaters, so I guess I made up for not seeing the first one.
I haven't seen any Hellboy film in cinema, and I'm assuming we're not talking about that reboot. I'm not bothered with either.
Well, I missed. Like I didn't see the reboot in theaters. I rented it, and I will give the reboot this as far as credit. Now this, like, the dialogue and the writing was crap. And if you know me, I like shit movies, and it's really weird for me to say when I have like a serious issue with a movie. But I am also a huge book fan of Hellboy and BPRD. Like I'm into the lore, I'm into the stories. I've read everything.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a huge fan of this universe. I will give them credit as far as the aesthetic and the look, and they got Professor Broom completely wrong. I did not. That was one of the main issues with me.
It wasn't Ian McShane's fault, was it?
No, it wasn't. It's just the fact that he was cast in that role, and he's a great actor.
He is.
But he was cast in that role, and it was totally not for him. He should not have been cast in that role. I will give David Harbour credit. He played a great Hellboy. He played a younger Hellboy, because remember, he's barely out of his 30s, since being conceived in the 40s. Like he ages differently than humans. So I took it as him being a younger, kind of more immature, like
a hothead, if you will.
A hothead, yeah, he's a hotshot Hellboy. I think he played him great. I loved that they had the Baba Yaga. I loved the witch. I mean, they took very familiar elements from the overall story, but it was just, I don't know, man. I think it was just the way it was mushed together. It felt rushed. We won't get into this. I know I'm reviewing a whole nother movie. I'm sorry.
Hey, it's still a Hellboy movie.
Yeah, I'm trying to give it credit, because it's an okay film to watch, but I don't know. It was rushed, in my opinion. Like, plus all the problems they had. It looked great. Visually, it looked cool, but story-wise,
I have not seen it. I didn't really want to, and I haven't heard good things about it, but I like David Harbour. I thought that was like the only thing.
Watch it for David Harbour, and I will say this: if you are a fan of the books and you've read the books, it's fun to watch and see what they took to make.
I've got a good question for you, Chris. I've got a good question for you. Does it bother you that none of the Hellboys have been British?
I have never thought of that.
Because we're all too in love with
I agree with Lindsay.
Yeah, like, man, maybe it was.
It does make more
maybe
sense.
We just have
be British, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, maybe we just have a bromance with Ron Perlman, but
Guillermo Del Torro definitely does.
Guillermo Del Toro definitely does.
I couldn't name one British actor in my head to play Hellboy, though. That's the weirdest. Maybe Tom Hardy.
Yeah, but he wasn't really known really in 2004.
I meant for if they like made
they
new
rebooted it,
new,
yeah, but
they
we can't
it.
put Tom Hardy in everything. I mean, they want to cast Tom Hardy in every
please
role.
Get out the Venom movies. Please get him out the Venom movies. Or bring back a season 2 of Taboo. That's a great show if you've not seen it.
I have not heard of that.
See, now the casting of a British Hellboy is going to be
the
only thing I can think about.
That's like that's like trying to cast an American James Bond. That's like
they almost did that, though. Did you know they almost did that back in the 80s?
Oh, I know.
Was that with Clint Eastwood?
No, not quite that bad. They almost cast James Brolin as James Bond for Octopussy.
Yeah, I'm glad they did not, man.
But then
I respect Burt Reynolds for turning it down because he wasn't British.
Yeah, that's good.
I
like, no, man, I got this thing.
That would have been ridiculous.
And a diesel and...
Yeah.
But it's funny you guys mentioned bromance with Ron Perlman, because when they were making this movie, Del Toro and Mingola were both like, who should play Hellboy? And at the same time, they both said Ron Perlman.
Yes. He's...
Yes.
Yeah.
But guess who the studio wanted to play Hellboy?
Not Vinny Jones.
Vin Diesel. Vin Diesel.
Well, that'd be even worse than Vinny Jones.
Well, yeah, because I'm not throwing shade. I know Vin Diesel's a nerdy dude, but he has no charisma.
No, Ron Perlman does.
He's a better stoic character than he would like a hot-headed.
He's like if you took a little Mitsubishi street car or street racer and turn it into an actor. He's like...
And not only did they're like, fine, you guys want Ron Perlman, the dude who was in that obscure 80s television show.
You leave Beauty and the Beast out of this.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, it's a cult show. It is, but it's a cult show. It is not.
Cody, can I just bring up that the year before, Ron Perlman had a minor role in Looney Tunes Back in Action where he gets eaten by the Tasmanian Devil?
He did.
Yeah.
He's had a ton of screen credits.
Imagine if they showed that scene to the executives and they said, you want that bloke who gets eaten by the Tasmanian Devil? How is he going to be Hellboy?
Just paint him red. And props for adding the little devil hooves to him too. Like, did you ever notice that in the background?
Yes.
Yeah, his little devil hooves. They don't show it. Like when he's in full dress, he's wearing boots, but if you look when he's in his little dorm room or whatever, and he's like working out, if you look,
if he has hooves, and how
kind of blurry.
How do his boots not fall off?
Right, and at least made me look like I have feet. You know,
I read that
chicks don't dig hooves.
They didn't make them evident too much in the film because they felt like the stunts would be safer performed if he didn't wear hooves on his feet.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
But not only were the studio... Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, you have to give him props for Roger the Homunculus, too. He's in the background. He's in the hallway with all the artifacts, and if you look in the background, you'll see him. He's like in a glass tube. But I was like, yes, it's Roger. That's awesome. Who we never got to see in the second movie, but that's all right. We got Klaus.
Yes. But they wanted Vin Diesel so much they even tried to cast him as Abe Sapien.
Oh.
Guys, come on.
Right?
Hang on, never in the future, guys. Okay, we're all family here.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry,
and I think
Ben,
that's
what attracts.
Vin Diesel could have been the homunculus. He could have been.
I could see Vin as Roger.
I don't mean to like.
Yeah.
Typecast an actor because of their build or their voice, but like it would have been perfect, and then he could have been like, I was in the Hellboy movies.
Yeah, actually, that is a really good fan casting.
What's the other agent called in this film? Not Jeffrey Tambor, the younger one.
Yeah, that's another issue with the
Myers.
studio interference. They wanted like a surrogate for the audience to be brought into this world, and that's why the Agent Myers character is in this
That's
film.
his name, Agent Myers. Tom Myers, isn't it?
I think so. I think that is
Something
the
like that,
actor's
yeah.
name. And while I don't have anything
the character's
against
name.
The character.
Oh yeah. I don't have anything against this character but I do feel like he's not needed in this movie at all. Like
Is Lindsay gonna check who the actor is?
We
Can
can.
you check who the
Actor
actor
is,
You
hold
know,
on.
we were
his
just
name
talking
is-
about that last night.
What's that?
The actor for him.
Tom Myers?
Yeah.
Rupert
Yeah.
Evans?
Rupert
Rupert
Evans.
Rupert Evans.
Rip Evans.
He's a sweet. I love his character because he is just so unbelievably nice in the middle of all of the like banana stuff that's going on. That's all rooted in like immeasurable evil. But his character is kind of the whole thing with Liz, where it's like a romantic relationship. I don't care for that really.
But he doesn't have any romantic feelings for her by the like
Well,
they try to hint it, but like he's
they
like
tried to make it happen, and
Uh-huh.
it feels icky. Even as nice as he is, she's still clearly having serious mental health problems that she has to address,
Right.
on top of having some crazy superpowers that have traumatized her. Like trying to squeeze a love interest in there, even as sweet and golden retriever-y and puppy as he is, I just didn't care for that. And I don't like that that's like a jealousy that motivates Hellboy, because that just takes away from the monster fighting. Maybe that is why people like the second one a little bit more, because there's more monsters. There's more
Yeah.
BPRD than there is like.
Right.
You can
For
still
sure.
have that banter between Liz and Hellboy in the middle of monster fights. It doesn't have to be a movie about them dating or not dating or whatever they're doing.
well, yeah, they don't have to do that, but Del Toro's explanation for her is that she has to accept who she is first. And when
Right.
she fully embraces that she is this person with these powers, then it's like, okay, I can be in love with a giant red demon. Because
Yeah.
he doesn't care if I could engulf into flames either. He's totally cool with it because
How does he get the nickname Red? Because that's never really explored, and he's only called Red a couple of times in the film.
I don't know if they ever explain it other than he's red. And I'm gonna show my ignorance here that I've never really read the comic book, so
Neither have I.
But I love
You have
Del
to read the
Toro.
books. You have to.
I want to accept that, guys. You've got to go and pick up those books and immediately read them. You will not regret it. I promise you. If you're a fan of comic books,
It'll help you enjoy these movies more. If there's parts of the movies that you're like, meh.
yeah, and it'll help you. Again, it'll help you enjoy
The
it.
animated.
It won't put me off the second movie, right?
There are 2 animated movies
that are really good.
that are really worth watching too. Like
I'd love to watch them.
they had
I
all
watched them.
the actors come back for the voices and everything. So
See, I kind of struggle to read. I prefer reading stuff online.
look them up. There are sites. I'm not going to say anything,
Blood and Iron
live,
and
but-
Sword of Storms are the 2 animated features from 2006 and 2007. And we've watched those a lot.
Yeah, we've seen them.
Probably more often than we've watched the first Hellboy movie.
They should do a theatrical animated Hellboy film. That would be amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that should be our third Hellboy movie.
Yeah.
Since
Just bring back
Perlman's over 70 and they're not going to give him a budget for a live action one, just do it animated.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, if Pinocchio gets successful, he should do animated.
Because you could make it so much more. You could do so many more.
You can.
things
You
that
can.
couldn't
That's
do.
why I'm looking forward to his Pinocchio films. I reckon that is just going to be a piece of art.
Yeah. Speaking
But
of
he
animated
has to get
films,
Bruce Campbell as Lobster Johnson since they teased that for so long.
Oh man, I love Lobster. And again, speaking of the comics, they have a Lobster Johnson like spinoff in the books, and they're again, They're great, and I highly recommend them. So look up your Lobster Johnson. I think Hayden Christian Church played a great Lobster Johnson in the new movie. He's in there. Was it the new movie?
I'm still batting around the British Hellboy thing in my brain, and I just literally Googled. I typed in British Ron Perlman to see if Google has any ideas. It's not working. I have a few ideas. I'm not going to share them because I'm kind of embarrassed. But this is my brain puzzle for the week now. That makes the most sense.
Sorry, Lindsay.
No, I appreciate it because now I'm like, man, I bet John Hurt knows somebody who could play a British Hellboy.
Sean Bean in makeup. He'd have to die though.
Right, you can't cast Sean Bean in a movie. He's gonna die.
Because he's Hellboy, a lot of people are going to what looks like kill him perfectly, but because he's Hellboy, he can't die. But Sean Bean still has to die on screen a lot of times.
Spoiler alert: Hellboy does.
Yeah.
You got to read the books though. Find out.
But I think what attracts Del Toro to this material is one, it's got monsters, but he loves like kind of reversing the narrative of what people think of monsters and where monsters' places are, and
this is
banding together a group of people that are kind of considered outcasts. Like they would not be welcomed in most homes, right? Like if a giant red man and a fish man and a lady who can set herself on fire came to your door, most people would be like, oh no. But Guillermo Del Toro would be like, come on in.
Yeah, Guillermo Del Toro will be like, here's my tank. I just have one of those in my living room. You can hop in there. We have a room-sized kiln for the people who prefer the higher temperatures. What was there was a comic, a digital comic about The Shape of Water, where they joke that Guillermo Del Toro is a furry, and Guillermo Del Toro is like watching through the window of their house. And he's like, actually, when it's amphibians, we're called scalies. Like correcting I think Guillermo Del Toro made everybody who's ever been fascinated with monsters, platonically or otherwise, feel more comfortable about that. And
I'm not so sure about the fishtiality there.
The fishtiality.
Well,
I think that's not about you. It's about Guillermo Del Toro and whoever he gets to consent to spend time with him.
Maybe as a... Never mind.
We love you, Guillermo. The creature from the Black Lagoon and all that. Those are cool characters. Those are cool monsters. I totally get it. But he's a scaly.
Maybe he's just answered that long sought after answer of every person that grew up watching monster movies. Is like, man, did the fish man ever get it on? Like, is he able to do that?
How did that work?
Yeah, how does that work? And then he's like, I'm going to build a whole story about that
for everybody
around that and make it happen. Anyway,
yeah, we'll get into more about fishmen and do they deserve love or not when we talk Shape of Water.
Of course they
do. It's just whether or not we want to see it.
Yeah.
But an interesting thing about this movie too, and it's been in other movies, is Rasputin as the bad guy. Like he's like almost the ultimate boogeyman. I'd say Hitler is still our ultimate boogeyman in history, but Rasputin's got to be up there, because also think about in real life terms what they did to murder him. Like they wanted to make sure that man was dead.
And supposedly he was still alive after some of it. Like he died from hypothermia and not the
gunshot wound,
not the gunshot, and the strangulation, the beating, the stabbings. It was the cold.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, isn't he also the villain in Anastasia?
Yes, he is.
He's going to be a villain in the new Kingsman film too.
Right. He does make a spooky villain.
I have a friend that moans that they don't treat him with enough dignity and that he's not really a bad guy and he's misunderstood. And he's like, why are Hollywood making him a villain in everything Russian related?
Because it was impossible to kill almost.
I don't know, man. He had the makings of a cult leader written all over him, and he got away with it. Like, I mean, he got into the inner circles royalty there. So
maybe
I don't
my
know.
mate's just been brainwashed then.
Yeah, he had some kind of charisma. He had what kind of charisma? You have to ask yourself, what kind of charm and charisma did Hitler have to rise to his ranks? So look at David Koresh, look at George Jones, look at all these other famous cult leaders that are able to work their way into the higher echelon of society and make things happen for them. So I mean, you got to give that right there makes him a pretty terrifying villain. Like that he's
Yeah.
Now they took their liberties and go ahead.
Yeah. I can see why people like to use him as a villain in movies. In movies, I just really don't understand whether my mate's just sticking up for a bad guy or whether he's actually misunderstood.
Oh yeah. I mean, I wasn't dogging on him. I just I took that and I was like, oh man, this is what makes him terrifying.
Yeah,
he's not physically terrifying. He's just a bald dude. He looks intimidating a little bit.
Yeah.
But sorry, Cody. But he
Well, now you say that, but apparently I have scared some people, and I'm like, I'm just standing here. Why am I scary? And I think
you'd be scarier without your glasses on. If you didn't have your glasses on, you'd probably look scarier.
Well, what I meant is he's not he's not a huge muscly Hulk with a deformed face. He's like,
not observably threatening. It's our fascination with death and the fact that it took so much to actually. That's our fear, is that the thing we're afraid of is unkillable. That's why Michael Myers is so great and Jason is so great. It's because you can't kill them and they just keep coming.
Right.
But I don't know
who.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, sorry to interrupt. I was gonna say, who is scary though is the sand Nazi assassin.
Yeah. That's terrifying.
They did a great job with him.
Oh yeah.
Was it Cronin or something like that?
Are you the hold on? I got off on a little notes rabbit hole about Rasputin. There's an Ask a Mortician video about him and a certain part of his body that had its own adventures after his death. But I was trying to find more information about Rasputin specifically. Hold on. What's that character's name?
Was it Cronin? Yeah.
Kroenen. Yep.
I was also going to say he's a more memorable villain. Like, to me, this is a pretty weak villain compared to... That's another thing that Hellboy 2 is better at. I think that's a much better villain.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah,
than Rasputin.
That's straight from the book, man. All of that is just straight out of the comics, and I love it. Like, again, I think you can tell he had more liberties with this movie. He was able to expand more on it. Like, it goes back to the first one, playing it safe, and just it being kind of a setup movie. And you can say that with Blade. Like, Blade 1 that played it safe. It was a setup movie. You can say that with any movie that has had a sequel. Just about that,
especially in this time frame, because we're even in 2004, we're not where we are now with a comic book movie where we're doing like the internals and things that would never have gotten an adaptation without the success of other movies. But yeah, especially because for whatever reason, I don't know, I guess America is still an overtly Christian country, like nervous about a movie called Hellboy being in theaters and it's the protagonist of the story.
Right.
But I didn't know this about the movie. Del Toro brought in the late Ray Harryhausen to consult on the stop motion effects that are in this film.
Well, if you're gonna make that is excellent.
Movie.
Yeah, bring the man who made monster movies where they are. I just thought that was great. And I know, of course, Del Toro was probably nerding out the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
He talked to him.
Like, give this man anything he wants. I write off on it.
That's just incredible. And funny story about Ray Harryhausen. He talked about, like, making those little puppets and stuff and doing it. He says, "Yeah, I hate it when the telephone rings because then I forget where I had the little puppet when I filmed it last."
Stop motion, man.
That's funny. Yeah, that would suck. Be like, all right, shot 3,450. Ring, ring.
Yeah.
Oh, crap. Like, you move it like just half an inch. You're like, no.
And now, for like $6, you can get Stop Motion Studio on your phone, and it has a little feature where it takes your last image and kind of lays it over whatever you're trying to line up for your next shot, so you don't lose your place. It keeps all your shots in order. My kids will spend an entire weekend playing Stop Motion Studio with that app. I can't imagine having to be the person that like pioneered like the way for stop motion and monsters, and to see how easy it is now.
Yeah, I wanted to just say I've just started rereading my Hellboy review while you guys have been talking, and I put in there that it's how it introduces fantasy elements into the superhero genre. What do you guys think about that?
Oh, for sure, because I can't even think of another comic book movie related to this before that kind of had all these elements. I mean, Blade, you would say, is probably more horror than fantasy because it's vampires. And we had Spawn, which is probably more horror than fantasy as well. Not as good of a movie, but I can't think of anything else because... Yeah, and it's weird that you would think after the success of Tim Burton's Batman that we would have gotten a string of comic book adaptations in the 90s, but we got like weird, obscure stuff. And like, they're like, oh, what worked about Batman? The ode to the noir. So we're going to like do all those radio pulpy character comic book movies, which most of those are good, even though they weren't successful. But it's kind of weird that like DC didn't like
I've always wanted to see Darkman, the Sam Raimi one.
Oh, you should check it out. And you know what's interesting? Why he made Darkman is that they never let him make The Shadow, which did get made a few years later because Raimi's a huge Shadow fan. So that's where Darkman kind of came from. And that's also horror elements too, but that's a great film and it's an original superhero movie. Like, it's not based on anything.
I really enjoyed the pulp movies. You had The Rocketeer through Disney. You had Dick Tracy through Disney Touchstone.
I want to see Dick Tracy. I really want to see Dick Tracy.
Watch it. It's great. I mean, it's totally 90s cheese, but it's an excellent...
Yes, that's what I want. A proper old school 90s
and movie. It's got a stacked cast.
Oh,
sounds like the best of 90s movies to check out if you've not seen them before.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. Rocketeer, Dick Tracy, The Shadow,
and
the Phantom.
Yeah, that was...
And then they had... they had Doc Savage in the works for a while, like off and on throughout the years, but they turned it down. But man, could you imagine like a team up movie with those four like pulp just heroes? That'd be great because they're all in the same time period, basically.
Had they been successful, maybe.
No, Navarro did the cinematography on this film.
Nice.
Oh, cool. Correct me because I don't know how many films they've worked together on.
Has he shot? Have a look. I'm just checking.
Because I know Del Toro loves to work with people again, which most directors do.
Crohn's, he's worked with Del Toro on.
Okay.
The Devil's Backbone, which is the next Del Toro film I'm going to check out. Hellboy, Pan's Labyrinth, and Hellboy 2, the Gold Army, and Pacific Rim.
Huh. Yeah, that makes sense. I want to say he was a big Del Toro also got him work in the U.S. too, if I'm not mistaken. Like for other.
He recently worked on the Doolittle film, so his career has had a bit of a downfall.
Well, you take a job. It's
Emmanuel Lubetsky shot Cat in the Hat. I think that's worse, to be fair.
There you go.
Lubetsky is one of the best in the industry.
I mean, people forget that it's a job and you got to make money. And, not everything, especially because the cinematographer is just a craftsman. Like, they're not, like, they're definitely intricate and important to the look and the feel of the movie, but their job is to do the director's job. And if they don't have a director like Del Toro giving them.
Yeah. Guillermo Navarro's also worked with Quentin Tarantino on Jackie Brown.
Oh, wow. No wonder that movie's so good. But yeah, if you don't have a director giving you distinctively what they want and what their vision is, like if you just have a director for hire, you're not going to get they're not probably going to produce the same work they would if they had.
Because I don't have a clue who Stephen Ganghang is, and he must not be a good director to work for. He might not have the same standards as Tarantino or Del Toro.
Yeah, is that who directed Doolittle?
Yeah, Stephen Ganghang.
Okay. Yeah. He was probably someone just hired on, and no offense to that person. I'm sure they're fine. They can set up a shot and all that, but everybody can't be a visionary director, and but that happens sometimes, and that's why I always, even if I don't like a movie, I will always support a director's vision over playing it safe. So if they swing for the fences and miss, I'd rather them swing for the fences and then just make a boring movie.
Yeah, because I like Ang Lee, but I feel like he was given a bit too much creative control on Hulk, and I think that's why that film failed, because Ang Lee wanted it to be more of a comic book movie.
Story aside, I enjoyed that movie. Like,
I prefer it to the 2008 film.
It was cool. It was different. It was cool at the time that it came out. It really, when I saw the panel shots that they did for that movie, it really took me off guard. And at first I was like, but it really grew on me. I was like, that's actually kind of really cool. I like that,
I think as many comic book movies we have now, and with the MCU, if that movie was made today, I think it would be better praised, because people would be like, oh, this is so refreshing and different.
Yeah, it was different, I enjoyed it for what it was. It's kind of like the Ben Affleck Daredevil. It has its moments.
It's better than the Ben Affleck Daredevil.
No, it's better, but
Hulk 2003 is kind of its own hidden masterpiece in a way that nobody realizes.
Well, what I'm saying is, like, I enjoyed the earlier Marvel movies because it got us to where we are now. And at the time, I'm not going to lie, at the time, I'm like, oh my God, these are so great, because that's all we had.
I love the original X-Men trilogy more than any other superhero movie. I'm not scared to admit that.
I love the X-Men movies.
Does anyone really talk bad about them other than Part 3?
No, everybody just says just the first two are the best in the original trilogy.
I dig the third one.
It's not that
all right.
The third one, I'd say I don't even mind X-Men Origins Wolverine. I think the Wolverine's worse.
Yeah.
Oh, shots fired! Shots fired!
Yeah, that one was pretty bad.
Hot take.
I'll watch it again. I'm like the optimist of this group. Okay, I'd look for all the good in movies. I will watch some of the worst movies known to man that some people are like, ew, why? And I'm like, man, it's fun. They're fun movies.
Yeah, some bad movies. I've been watching all of M. Night Shyamalan movies recently. Some of them are fun bad, but some of them are just dreadful. And sorry, Cody, but Lady in the Water is his worst so far.
It's not good. I'm not defending it, but I will tell you one thing: good or bad, M. Night Shyamalan makes an M. Night Shyamalan movie, and So I'll give him props for that, whether you like it or not. It's an M. Night Shyamalan movie.
I think I got so
you
used
kind
to
of know what you're in for, but he's got The Sixth Sense and Split. Those are my two favorites of his.
Oh, Sixth Sense. Yeah, we just covered Sixth Sense, and it still holds up to today. You know, it's such a great movie.
It does. It really does. I'm surprised that he makes a really good movie like that, and then the rest of his films are just kind of laughable.
Well, I have a theory, but I don't want to get too off topic.
Yeah.
But talking about like certain comic book movies that did well, didn't do well, like this movie did well for its budget, and it's a unique take on the superhero film, like you brought up. Like it's introducing fantasy into it. It wasn't a monstrous success, but then I guess it did really well on home video. So it was able to get. All right. It was able for them to make a sequel.
Yeah.
And I guess after his critical success of Pan's Labyrinth is why he got even more creative control on the second one. But it's just wild to me that they almost cast someone besides Ron Perlman, because I think Ron Perlman makes this movie as good as it is, this first one especially.
Oh yeah, he is Hellboy, and like I said, I think again David Harbour did a great job. Okay, but he came across as more of a younger, like a teenager Hellboy, or someone in his early 20s, cocky, hot-headed. Ron Perlman's Hellboy came across as someone maybe in their late 30s, pushing 40. They're a little more. They can still be immature and cocky, but they're a little more wise of the world. They're a little more reserved. They, you know, I don't know. They're kind of growing up a little bit. You know, I know they said he was barely in his 30s, but I think he portrayed a more of an older Hellboy. You know, and David Harbour's could have come across as, again, you know, he just pushed 20, 21. He's drinking age. He's a little cocky, hot-headed, you know. But yeah, when I think Hellboy, when somebody says Hellboy, like Ron Perlman pops into my head. Like Ron Perlman's Hellboy pops into my head. His voice, like now when I read the Hellboy comics, I read it in Ron Perlman's voice. Like, you know.
I don't know if you remember, Chris. There was a show on VH1 where they used to have comedians come on and talk about all the things going on in pop culture for the week. And when this movie came out, they had comedians talking about it. And one comedian's like, man, I feel bad for Ron Perlman. He's always such a talented and gifted actor. And every script he gets, he's reading a script and it's like, in walks hideous monster. And he's like, guess that's my role.
Yeah, poor Ron Perlman, because he was an alien in Star Trek Nemesis too. He was the second in command.
Yeah,
Reman.
that's something him and John Hurt have in common. They've both been in the Alien franchise.
Yeah.
But I just love this character, and Mingola mentions that he based it off his dad a little bit. Like, Hellboy's just this blue-collar guy. He's like, I'm going to go save the day, but I like my cigar, and I like to eat yummy food.
Yeah.
I love that he loves cats, and, like, there's that whole scene of him trying to save this box of kittens who are just randomly in the subway when he's fighting one of those monsters.
But, again, that's out of the comic book. He's a cat lover in the comic book. But I think that has more to do with like the superstition that comes with cats, like because in the comic it's more superstition heavy than it is in the movies. Like they kind of, or in the first movie. Like I'll have to rewatch the second one when we.
Is the Catholicism heavy in the comic books too?
Everything, Catholicism, any just religion in general. Then you have the fairy tales, the lore and the legends, and King Arthur, and even Morgana. Like it all just interweaves, and it is absolutely amazing. That's probably why it's one of my favorite like non-Marvel or DC comic properties. Like just the whole thing
Mine's
is
V for
just
Vendetta.
so well done. What's
Well,
that?
that actually is DC.
What's that?
Yeah, they had a
V for Vendetta.
Vertigo. It's their Vertigo line, which was more adult. They call it more adult, mature content. So yeah.
So I guess
But
I
it's
guess
not.
it would be DC.
It's not a traditional DC comic book property.
Then it probably
And
would be Hellboy then.
And it's a shame Vertigo's no longer working because they created such iconic work.
Alan Moore
Dr.
is a genius.
Solar and
Yeah, even though he hates everything they've made into a movie, which I think V for Vendetta is a great movie.
Hey, speaking of Rasputin, that dude looks straight up like Gregory Rasputin. Alan Moore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of really into some of the same stuff.
He is really into the occult. Like I've seen a couple of documentaries, interviews. I kind of got into him for a little bit, just researching his work, and because I've read. Again, I grew up. We had a comic book shop. We pushed Watchmen and like all of his properties. He had some really just bizarre Prometheus, just really strange stuff, and it's because he himself is into the occult, and he mixes that in with his writing and his works and stuff, and it's very strange, but they're good. They're good stories. But anyway,
yeah. There's also someone made a video of him and Grant Morrison dueling each other.
Oh wow. Do it like how?
Like as wizards or something.
That's interesting. I'm gonna have to see, because I know Grant Morrison's the same way. He's really into the occult and the witchcraft and whatnot.
Did you guys know that Guillermo Del Torro did some voices in this movie?
Did he?
Did he?
Yeah, he's the voice of the dead corpse that they that Hellboy resurrects to find down for their tunnel.
Nice. That's referencing a short story called The Corpse, which actually they split it into two. I'm sorry, I'm going to go off here for a minute. Where he has to, in the original Hellboy story, the girl, there's this girl Moira, who he later falls in love with. That's the only romantic relationship he's had. But as a baby, her parents call for Hellboy to help out because these fairies had kidnapped their daughter, to raise as their own, to be a link between the fairy world and the human world. Well, they replaced the baby with like a goblin. So he finds out that it's this goblin, and he is tasked. He's like, okay, they're like, if you want the body back, you're going to take this body and give it a proper Christian burial before sunrise. So he goes off on this journey, and this is like a church story. Okay, and it's done so well. But anyway, he visits 4 different cemeteries, and then he's all denied. And finally, he makes it to the 4th cemetery, where this corpse is denied a proper Christian burial, and that releases this baby.
You still there, Robbie?
I'm still here, yeah.
Okay. I was just making sure it wasn't my internet.
Sorry, Chris.
That's weird.
You froze up.
Anyway, you'll have to read it. Short story. I'm sorry. I could get off on these tangents, but they took the corpse part story and oh
yeah. You bring me back to a comment I was saying.
Love this property.
I was going to say something earlier about what you said about fantasy, and
I could go off on all the references. Yeah. And I was working, but all of these stories that he's done research on, they're all like pagan legends and fairy tales and stuff that he interweaves. He modernizes it.
You're bringing me back to a good point. Guillermo Del Toro loves fairy tales. He is a fan.
Yes.
This is his thing. I know people say he associate him with monsters, but no, I associate him with fairy tales.
Well, look at I consider Pan's Labyrinth a fairy tale.
For sure. I would say Hellboy 2 is a fairy tale.
And the Shape
It's been a couple of years since I've seen it. Yeah, Hellboy 2 is a fairy tale. Yeah. It's kind of like a borderline fairy tale horror.
Yeah, Shape of Water definitely would be a fairy tale as well. Another interesting thing is, we were talking about David Goyer. He was considered to direct this, as well as Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who is a French director who accused Del Toro of ripping him. Ripping him off.
He would have done a great job on a Hellboy film. I would love to have seen something all colourful, and they could have the woman from Amelie as the woman that Selma Blair plays, and she would have done brilliant as there.
And then we talked about
I'm campaigning for that, along with the British Hellboy. Fan remake of Hellboy. Is that director still working? Oh, Bruno D'Abamo to do the cinematography, and it'll be beautiful.
It absolutely would, but I don't think he'll do another American studio film after what he dealt with Alien Resurrection. Because he was also offered Harry Potter films, and he turned them down. And Del Toro was offered Prisoner of Azkaban before doing this and turned it down.
No. If Cuarón did not direct that movie, then the Harry Potter franchise would have flopped.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
They needed an artist to do that Harry Potter movie. They need that because it's the best book from what I've heard of Harry Potter fans during my Harry Potter month I had on the website. I realised it needed to be directed by an artist.
Yeah, I love that film. It's the best one, and you can clearly tell Cuarón's style in that film, more so than any of the other directors that have worked on it.
Definitely. Although I see the Chris Columbus about obviously the coming of age kind of stuff.
Well, I think even though I don't think Columbus is a great director, I think
he's not a great director. He's not a master, but he's a good director at best.
I think his direction worked for those first two films, especially the first one.
Definitely. He has dropped after them two films, though. He was better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
I did like Christmas Chronicle 2. I will give him that. I did like that movie. Kurt Russell's the ultimate Santa. Sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. I kind of I don't like those films, but he's the reason they're watchable to me.
That's fair enough.
Those are Christmas movies in our house with our kiddos. We watch those.
I'm assuming your kids do love them.
You talked about we didn't like the David Hyde Pierce voicing of Abe. Did you guys know he didn't take credit for being in the movie?
Yes, I've noticed that when I was watching the credits. I'm like, why isn't David Hyde Pierce's? Like, if I were a producer, I'd put his name in top billing, whether he liked it or not. Well, not top billing, but probably second billing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was out of respect for Doug Jones's work.
Well, I think one Doug Jones that I was going to say that the second one, so they should have just let Doug do the voice.
They should have.
Well, they did the same thing.
Because
they did the same thing when he was
talking Buffy. That's why they don't let him talk in his roles. Because he did that Buffy role so well.
The studio screwed him over because this is one of those. This is just like when he was Silver Surfer. They had someone else come in.
Lawrence Fishburne.
Although I love Lawrence Fishburne. I do love Lawrence Fishburne.
I do too, but I mean, man, you got to give it to Doug. You know, like he can still
you
pull
do
off. I
have
think
to
he
give
still
it
could
to
have pulled
Doug.
off.
He probably
I think
could
he still
Yeah,
could have
he's
pulled off the Silver Surfer.
he's a good actor just because he's known
Yeah.
for playing these heavy aesthetic makeup characters doesn't mean he can't use his own voice. Like it makes sense in Pan's Labyrinth that Del Toro used a Spanish speaking actor to voice Pan. But like here's Abe Sapien, he could have done the voice, and I'm glad now that because he's on Star Trek and he's becoming more of a known actor and respected.
He's amazing as
I
Saru.
would like to see him play a normal human in a film. I hate to say this.
I mean,
I think the closest he's got was the zombie and Hocus Pocus,
which he doesn't talk; he grunts for most of the movie.
Right? He was almost human in that.
But what won him over with Perlman was Del Toro showed him Blade 2 for whatever reason. They were like, "Okay, you can cast Ron Perlman."
The coolest thing about that movie, him and his sunglasses, and his you know that. I just love him in that movie. I don't want to spoil it for anybody.
I mean, Ron Perlman in anything is usually an added benefit, even if the movie's not good. You're like, hey, there's Ron Perlman.
You're right.
Yes. Well, I'm anticipating for Don't Look Up on Netflix, December 24th. It's my most anticipated movie, and he's in that. So I hope him and the other big names like Leo do great jobs.
Well, it looks absolutely hilarious, and I'm sure it's going to be preachy because that's where Adam McKay is right now, but I'm fine with that. I've liked his content that he's been doing.
He does satire, though, so it's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's funny, I don't really care for politics, but I just find political satire hilarious anyway.
Is there anything else you want to bring up before I ask you a couple more questions and then we rank this movie?
Yes. What do you think to the music in this film?
Oh.
I don't really think about any iconic Hellboy, but I do talk about the score in my review. So I'm just going to quickly have a look on my laptop and see what I said.
Sure.
It does bring in some tone when there are intense moments. It does manage to create tension, but it's not really iconic.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Like I'm a soundtrack guy, and I'm a believer, a very firm believer that
I'm not big on Pacific Rim, but that has a better soundtrack because of Ramin Djawadi's soundtrack is outstanding.
I love that main theme in Pacific Rim. Like
at the end credits,
that's where I was going. That's where I was going. The main theme in Hellboy is great. I love that the opening credits. It's kind of the Hellboy theme, but the rest of it is not as noticeable. Like it's almost kind of forgettable.
They should have got.
I hate saying that because I love the movies so much, but
you can't do all the superhero movies.
Fine, get Hans Zimmer then.
Also can't do all
But I really think that
can't he do Hellboy? Then Howard Shaw will be great for Hellboy. I love Howard Shaw. He did Lord of the Rings.
Howard Shaw, yeah. He's working on. Oh, thank God, he is working on the new Lord of the Rings series on Amazon, and that makes me
have a tiny bit of hope for that.
Happy. Well, I have and I will not take long. I know we got to wrap this up. For one, they had to keep it within Tolkien's universe, within Peter Jackson's universe. Okay, it all has to tie in to his movies. It's supposed to have his look and aesthetic. I mean, they're going to build on that, but it's supposed to lead into his look and aesthetic with all of the. Howard Shore is coming back, along with Bear McCreary, which he did the soundtrack on the reboot of Battlestar Galactica.
Andrew Leslie's passed away, so we can't get Andrew Leslie back, sadly.
Yeah. Well, you've got those two. Those two are pluses. The story, which the age and what it's set in, and we're gonna get. I mean, this is like Sauron, where he's still in elf form, and we're gonna get to see him manipulate the kingdoms, and we're gonna see eventually the forging of the rings, and his rise to power, which I think is going to be amazing. You're going to get to see the sinking of Numenor, and you're going to get to see the Numenorians make the trek across their ocean and settle Middle Earth. And it's supposed to, the budget is going to be way more than Game of Thrones. I'm already in love with the content. They're having to work very closely to make sure they don't stray. So I'm extremely excited about this. Like, I don't think I've been this excited about a TV show in a really, really long time. Like,
okay. I'm just trying to find something new. That's why I've been trying to get more into Dune, because I watched the movie today.
Ooh, you're gonna love Dune. I loved it. Again, I'm Captain Optimistic in this movie.
All right. I want to give it a second watch though. There is a lot to take in, but it's easier to follow than the David Lynch version.
Oh, of course. We plan on watching it one more time because I know there's stuff that I missed in the dialogue, and
I want to watch it again. I didn't like it as much as you, Chris, but I can't say it's a bad movie just for the visuals alone and the world building.
Yeah. Well, you have a point, Cody. Denis Villeneuve could win my Fleming Awards this year.
I will tell you this: it wasn't as fleshed out as I wanted it to be, but keep in mind that he has enough footage, he said, for around about a 6-hour movie. So they had to cut a lot of stuff, which makes me think that we're going to get like this ultimate version. Or
I'm sure we will when he makes part 2, which that's my biggest thing with this movie. And I know people have been bringing up Star Wars and Lord of the Rings as a comparison to this. Mm-hmm. But all those felt complete. Like, even Fellowship, even though you know there's more coming, like, it was a good stopping point. How this ended, I'm like, well, where's the rest of the movie?
I thought it ended all right. Plus, it did say part 1 at the start of the movie. So
it did. It
would end there. It kind of felt like the ending after the last 20 minutes.
And then my biggest complaint is I just couldn't get into the characters. I felt like everyone was emotionally cold.
I love Jason Momoa.
Jason Momoa is the best part because he's the only person having fun in the movie.
Right.
He is.
I think they cut a lot of this out. Like, there was one of my complaints is they didn't give the House Atreides enough buildup in the beginning part of the movie. Like, they didn't really give it. They didn't flesh it out enough. Like the part with the doctor. The doctor had a huge part.
They explained the plot better, and I got the. I think the spice thing should have been a bit more important to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, this makes me think that we're going to get an ultimate cut, and it's going to flesh out so much more. But it's just he had to trim it, for release.
But can they do it as a mini series instead of a 6-hour movie, please? Like 6-part, 1-hour episode.
Well, they did do a mini series back in the early 2000s, which I hear is worse than the Lynch version.
Hey, those weren't so bad. I had those. It was Children of Dune, and I think there was another one.
But the review show I'm on, that guy's show, Chase, he brought up an interesting point, and we'll get off the side tangent of Dune in a minute, is that they probably shouldn't have focused so much on trying to be so faithful to the book and just did a interesting adaptation. Because I think they wanted to be so faithful because even though David Lynch's version has a cult following, I know there are a lot of people who love the book who hate that movie. Like, they absolutely hate it. I'm going to say spoiler here, so I'm not going to warn you, but if you hear this, skip ahead for about a minute or two for Dune. But I wanted a Dave Bautista, Jason Momoa fight in the movie, and I didn't get it.
Oh, that's coming in part 2 now.
Is
Or
it?
should be. No, never mind. I'm sorry. That's I'm sorry. I'm thinking Timothy Chalamet. My brain fart, guys. My bad. Go ahead. I heard totally different things when it interpreted through my ears and into my brain.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So
Cody.
shall we drift away from Dune and go back to Hellboy?
Yes. So
Yeah.
Hellboy, talking about the music that you brought up, Robbie. Yeah, it's not an icon.
Score from Dune. Sorry.
Yeah, not an iconic soundtrack, which a lot of superhero films have an iconic soundtrack.
Right.
Danny Elfman's Batman, John Williams' Superman. I love
Danny
Hans
Elfman's
Zimmer's.
Spider-Man, Danny Elfman's Hulk, Danny Elfman's Age of Ultron, and hopefully Danny Elfman's Doctor Strange too.
Hopefully. But I even love Zimmer's Man of Steel score, his Dark Knight score. I mean, Michael Giacchino's done some pretty good iconic scores. But I think
James Newton Howard because I feel like he's too forgettable.
Oh yeah.
But I think the music fits in this film. Now, like, yeah, I don't go back and be like, "Oh, it's such a great score," but like for the mood, it does its job.
Marco Beltrami did the score.
Yeah, you know who I think would be interesting, and I don't know if he's done a superhero score. Is Alexander Duplat?
Ooh.
Yes, he is the best. He is the best. He's the best composer for both Wes Anderson and Del Toro, and he is the key. He's the glue of your of this show.
There you go. You solved it. he's the bridge.
I could see him do a like a Shadow or a Dick Tracy style.
He was meant to do the Black Widow score, but I don't think that would have suited his style of music.
I don't think so either. Okay. I guess we'll get into ranking this sucker. So I don't know if you've watched any of our Del Toro episodes before, but we do a rankings based on the director. So if you love this movie, we're going to say it's fantastical because Del Toro is a fantastical world, fairy tales, monsters, creatures, all that. If you just simply like the movie, you think it's delightful, it's enjoyable, it's a delightful creature feature. If you think it's obscure, it's only for fans or cinephiles only, it's a deep dive. If you think it doesn't quite work, it's a little mediocre, then we say he cared too much about the monsters. And then if it's terrible, if it's an absolute failure, it's Cthulhu Rex All. Because of his love of H.P. Lovecraft and all the references, especially in this movie.
Yeah. Well, I gave on my review it a 4-star out of 5. So what would that be on your rankings?
I guess that'd be somewhere in between fantastical and delightful creature feature.
Because I would really recommend it to people, whether they're into Del Toro films or not, because it really works well with the superhero genre. But I know people who would like Pan's Labyrinth and Shape of Water more than Hellboy because but I would say delightful because I wouldn't say it's niche because it's more popular than Del Toro itself, but I think Del Toro is more known for Pan's Labyrinth and Shape of Water. So yeah, I'm gonna go with delightful creature feature.
Chris?
Yeah, I would have to go. I have to agree with Robbie. I'm going to go with the delightful creature feature because as much as I love this movie, the second movie is going to get a higher it's going to get a higher ranking for me. So I'm going to have to go with delightful. As much as I love this, I love the franchise. The second movie will get a higher rating. So I'm going to go with that one.
Is Lindsay here?
I am trying to see where she's at. I think she got caught up with 3 kids, so
that's understandable. Sorry about that. I'm going to agree. Delightful creature feature. I think this is a perfect starter film, and I think the restraints that we're given are shown in this film. I think I think Del Toro's direction and I think Perlman's casting is what elevates this movie. I think if you did not have both those elements, this movie would not be as good as it is. And I think the sequel is far superior and a better film. So this movie crawled so that movie could walk. And it suffers from a lot of first film superhero films have. The first film kind of has to be a setup and doesn't quite come together as well as the second film. And you could say that I know a lot of people really love the first Iron Man, but I think that movie works as well as it does also because of the casting of the lead actor. I think if you didn't have Robert Downey Jr. in that movie, Iron Man would not be as good as it is.
Right. Again,
so before we leave,
hey, Lindsay's on her way. If you can hold on just
great.
for 1 minute.
Well, we're not going to leave. I got to ask Robbie about if he's excited about the 2 Del Toro movies coming out, Nightmare Alley and Netflix's Pinocchio.
I am so looking forward to them too because I think Nightmare Alley will not come out till around Oscar time in the UK. Like they normally the Oscar bait films, they come out around March, and it's really annoying because I can't add them on to last year's. That's why I did the Fleming Awards the way I've done it this year, where I've included films that had UK releases in 2021, so I can watch all the films I missed, like Nomadland and Minari and Promising Young Woman, because they are some of my favourite films.
Your ranking?
My ranking.
Lindsay's here, and she's going to do her ranking. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go for it, Dan. Go. What's she ranking it then?
I'm sorry, Robbie. I did not mean to cut you off there.
I need the scale.
The lag is.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
We kind of live in small rural areas, Robbie. So apologies for our internet sometimes being wonky.
I've been to America. I kind of have seen like most of. I've seen like a little bit of California and Nevada. There are weird places in the desert where you guys live. It's not all compact like in the UK.
All right. Well, we basically did a delightful creature feature. Like we pretty much because the second one is essentially better than the original, like visually and story wise and overall. So I think we basically went delightful creature feature. Like it's there. It's almost top tier, but not quite.
You can tell that Guillermo Del Toro had to like listen to somebody else.
Yeah, like like Cody put it. This one crawled, so the second one could walk and run.
I agree with that. That sounds pretty on point with that reading. I know you're dying to show and tell what you have on your arm, Christopher.
Yeah.
Oh, which I forgot to mention that. So it's called The Right Hand of Doom, right?
Yes.
Well, Ron Perlman's left-handed, so it worked perfectly for it to be on his right hand.
That's awesome.
I'm left-handed.
I love that.
I'm left-handed.
You're
and then what about?
Huh? They just had a left-hand day, I believe.
And what about his adaptation of Pinocchio? That's probably going to be the creepiest Pinocchio we've seen yet.
I reckon he'll be true to the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he will
that's
be.
Kind of the thing is.
Sorry, Lindsay.
Most fairy tales are terrifying.
Those,
like the original versions of they were scary to be, I guess, motivating.
Those donkey transformations are
Oh yeah.
This is what I'm working on. The ass transformations.
The Pleasure Island donkeys.
Yeah.
Babies.
Those little kids transforming into donkeys. That's going to be horrifying.
And we're going to get a double dose of Ron Perlman. He's in both films.
And Kate Blanchett.
Yeah. Okay, two Kate Blanchetts and 2 Ron Perlmans. I'm in, Guillermo.
And they're both in Adam McKay's Don't Look Up, so that's 3 lots of them.
There you go, man. It's just going to be a good time at the movies.
and Kate Blanchett, they should just marry each other for a bit.
Yeah. I'm really interested in Nightmare Alley. I hope it's successful either commercially or critically because I want Del Toro to make his Mountains of Madness.
I hope he gets his second best director award for it. So I hope he gets the second best director award for it.
Yeah. But it's noir, it's carnival, circus, it's right up his alley.
Bradley Cooper needs his Oscar, so give him an Oscar for this film.
But hopefully this movie is successful enough that he'll finally have the confidence to make At the Mountains of Madness. I don't know if maybe he just can't do it anymore, but I want him to make that movie.
He needs to. We just watched Color Out of Space last night.
John Carpenter movie. Is that what you meant, Cody? The John Carpenter film?
Well, no, not In the Mouth of Madness. Lovecraft. Del Toro famously was going to adapt Lovecraft's short story At the Mountains of Madness, and it almost happened with Tom Cruise starring and James Cameron producing. It's his passion project. It's kind of what The Thing is based off of a little bit, even though it's its own short story. It's kind of like that, but it's with the Cthulhu monster. And
I want James Gunn to direct the Thing remake.
That would be fun.
Didn't they do a prequel, like a Thing prequel?
They did, and about 10 years ago. Yeah, I haven't watched it.
I want to watch it.
I want to get Justin Doyle from Worth of View Movies to watch the 80s Thing. He's never seen it.
Oh my goodness!
He's in the prequel.
Oh,
he's terrible with old movies. He's not like us who like go back and try and like find classics. He just watches new films.
Yeah, he's got to watch that. I mean, that's one of the all-time greats. I think that's going to be it for today, guys. Robbie, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come on and talk Hellboy with us.
Cody, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm happy to come on whenever you want me. You always up to being on my show, so I always like to return the favor.
Well, you know
Absolutely.
You know what? After next week is right after Halloween. Tolkien, baby. We get into the Lord of the Rings series. We do the Hobbit, the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit trilogy, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, all the extended versions. We're huge.
I'm coming on for one of them. I'm coming on for that.
Well,
okay, so we might have to make it super late for us because Robbie's 6 hours ahead of us. So
we do the late show anyway. I was thinking of chopping.
Yeah, but he would have to get up early, like 11 o'clock for him. For us is like 5 in the morning for him.
Gotcha. Well, I tell you what, we'll work on timing. We'll figure out how we're gonna do them because I'm thinking about we double them up, like we do 2 movies at a time, just so we can fit them in for the month. But that's like personally, that's what my family does. Is November is set aside for Tolkien, so we watch all the movies and we make a big deal out of it. We're big into that.
And Middle Earth month.
Yeah, I was planning to rewatch Fellowship of the Ring for its 20th, so I want to do. I want to get involved with Fellowship for its 20th.
Well, I tell you what, we'll discuss timing, and so we still have a week to get all that sorted out. But as soon as November hits, I'm ready to dive into Tolkien. So I'm excited. And of course, we're going to try to do some other movies.
Yeah, and Chris, I'll have to get you on my show at some point. I reckon you'll be good as a special guest one day.
Hey, I'm honored and would be happy to do that. So you just let me know. And
awesome.
Yeah. So I'm always
awesome. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, Robbie, before we let you go, is there anything you want to plug? You want to plug your YouTube channel or your reviews or anything you're working on?
Yes. So for all of so if you want to see me and Toady talk more about films, he does special guest appearances on my show, the Fleming Film Show, which you can find on my YouTube channel. Just type in my name, Robbie Fleming, on YouTube and search loads of stuff will come up. I've also got reviews on The Father, Eternal Sunshine, Promising Young Woman, The Big Lebowski. I've also got a Lynn Ramsey rank list and many more stuff you can check out if you want my reviews daily. You can go on the website Robbie's Reviews. They're full out written reviews. I think today we had Scream, which Justin Doyle from Worth to View Movies helped me co-wrote, and he is also the co-host of the Fleming Film Show.
Yeah, we talked about that a few weeks back as well for our spooky season talk.
Yes.
And Chris, do you want to plug anything for us before we go?
Man, just our usual, video store rejects. You can find us on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. So if you want to go back and look at any of our live shows, those are posted there. And if you have a suggestion on a movie you'd like to talk about, then let us know. And if you want to talk about Tolkien next month, let us know. Because, we're gearing up after spooky season. It's a Tolkien month, and then we got that last week that we try to fit some Thanksgiving movies in. There are very, very few of those, really. We get Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
I need to watch that for the first time this year, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles for Cody. Because he recommended me, and I was going to watch it in November around your Thanksgiving.
It's probably John Hughes' best film.
Nice. I love John Hughes films.
There's supposedly a 6-hour cut of that movie, like a really long cut of that movie. So, but anyway, we'll get into that.
Anyway,
Son-in-Law, Dutch, and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles are really the only Thanksgiving movies that we watch around here before we get into like.
What about Knives Out? That's set for Thanksgiving.
Right? Such a Thanksgiving movie.
Which one?
Knives Out.
Oh yeah, we could add that to our that would give us 4 movies to talk about, Cody. We could, for our double features, if we wanted to continue the double feature aspect of it, we could do
nice.
Knives Out.
I should probably come on for Planes, Trains, and Automobiles so Cody can hear my thoughts when I get round to watching it.
You should. That would be amazing. So yeah, if you want to, you're more than welcome to do that because it's a classic. I'm telling you.
Yeah. And I can tie it in with and we could do Knives Out as well as a double feature.
Well, that actually would work. We could do both of those movies and talk about, devote maybe 30 minutes to each, and then
good idea.
And then the other 2 movies could be Dutch and Son-in-Law. I know it's a cheesy movie, but we throw it in with our Thanksgiving movies. Because really, there's not a whole lot of movies set around or that deal with Thanksgiving. So that's kind of mainly why we dive into Tolkien movies for the whole month.
Would you watch the South Park Black Friday trilogy as tradition?
The what now?
The South Park Black Friday trilogy. So I like South Park, you see.
With South Park, oh wow! You know what? I love South Park, but since I have 3 younger kids, it's hard to. It's tough enough watching our horror movies after they go to bed. But I do love South Park. It's been a while since I've seen any. But
wait till they're older and get them into it. That's what I say.
Oh,
and then you can watch with them.
I want to ease them into The Simpsons. Like I think my oldest, he's 11, so he's we're in the Bible Belt, so I wasn't allowed to watch The Simpsons when I was younger. Like I didn't catch them until I was a lot older, and then by that time I was into King of the Hill, which I actually prefer King of the Hill to The Simpsons. But anyway, that's a whole other podcast, guys. But hey, again, we'll get with you on, guys. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for coming on, and we look forward to you coming back to talk Moonrise Kingdom for Wes Anderson and to, I guess, close out our Guillermo Del Toro series because I don't know when we'll get around, but we will be reviewing Nightmare Alley and Pinocchio when we get around to seeing those. But more than likely, you'll probably be closing out our Del Toro series with Shape of Water.
Excellent. I can't wait to come back and talk about that beautiful movie.
And if you're loving our Del Toro series, be back with us November 6th. We will be having Allison McCullough on to talk about Pan's Labyrinth. And we'll also be talking with Daniel.
I can't wait to listen to that one.
Yeah, and she's like a filmmaker and a critic, so it's going to be like, I'm surprised she's agreeing to come on the show. I've just been Twitter friends with her and on Letterboxd, and so yeah, it's probably going to be our biggest guest we've ever had.
Wow, that's cool.
But it's exciting.
Nice.
And then we'll talk Fantastic Mr. Fox with Daniel Sanchez. And then if you're enjoying our late night shows, we're doing Shaun of the Dead and Night of the Living Dead Wednesday night. Until then, have a wonderful weekend.
Bye, guys.
Night. Cody, did you freeze up there, buddy? Did he freeze up?
Yeah,
can you hear me, Robbie?
Yeah, I can hear you, Chris.
Okay.
Cody.
Hello. Poor Cody. Must be his internet. Everybody's
My
probably
internet.
trying to turn in papers. All right, guys. We'll give him a few more seconds. If not, we'll go ahead and close. Nope, he's gone, guys. All right. Robbie, thank you for coming on, and it was nice to meet you.
It's nice to be special guest on a podcast. This is my first time doing this, so thank you so much for letting me on here, and I'll see you guys soon.
Awesome, thank you. Yes, have a good, I guess, your evening, or
yes, evening.
Yes. All right, Robbie. Talk to you later.
Bye, Chris.